Bienvenue dans ce nouvel épisode du podcast Impacter au féminin où notre but est d'inspirer, influencer et donc justement d'impacter pour vous les femmes qui avez envie, pour vous montrer que vous pouvez avoir plus dans votre vie et que en général, puisque nous sommes toutes entrepreneurs, comment vous pouvez avoir plus dans votre vie et plus de liberté grâce à votre business ou pour vous encourager à lancer votre business. Et aujourd'hui, je suis très heureuse de recevoir Heidi Richards en direct de Miami, mais que ce podcast va être le premier en anglais, et il y en aura d'autres, mais vous inquiétez pas, vous aurez le sous-titrage en dessous, justement pour vous montrer aussi, parce que je parle beaucoup de mindset, et comment le mindset aux États-Unis et en France est un peu différent, et vous amener des femmes américaines qui vous montrent que tout est possible et qui, comme moi, vous dites que tout est possible quand on le veut vraiment. Hi, Heidi, how are you?
I am so good. Thank you for asking, Biba.
Yeah, so you're in Miami, I'm in Panama. We used to be pretty much neighbor because I was
All
living
right.
in Miami for 18 years. And you contacted me about 3 months ago, mentioning that you were writing a book, and we will speak about the book. But it was interesting because when I received, you asked me to do a review of your book, and your book is how to write a book, so which is a great thing, and that's what I teach too. So I thought it was interesting to do it. And then that's remind me, we know each other for, if it's not 25, it's at least 24 years, because you were the very first person who interviewed me in English at the time for your magazine online, for your website, and you had a magazine online. And the same as me, everything you do is for women, for as part of the business, for a lot of things. You have the woman in business, you have different magazine and different things. You did different award, and I had the pleasure in 2014 to be part of the 14 women in South Florida to be the more active in internet. So I got the golden mouse that I still have. And I thought it would be interesting to have you to learn about your story. Because as I said, the part that I was saying in French at the beginning, and you just told me before we started that your mother is half French from Marseille, which I never knew. We never got the opportunity to speak about that. So it's interesting. So that's business, how you did it, and what's your life now until, and at the end, we will speak about your new book.
Okay. Well, how I started my business was kind of a fluke. I had been working for a friend who was an occupational therapist, and I loved it, but it was very trying because you worked with a lot of mentally disabled people. And I come home a little depressed every day thinking, what I'm doing, I can't help them because they really don't know what's going on, but at least I'm a companion. And so my husband saw that at the time. I call him my starter husband because we're no longer together, but we're still good friends. And he came home one day and he knows I love crafts, knew I love crafts, and I was always creating something. And he said, honey, I found you a job in a flower shop. So I said, oh, I was so excited. So I went there and I interviewed and I got the job right on the spot. 2 weeks later, he comes home and he says, by the way, I just bought the flower shop you were working at. Seriously, no lie. And it was a little small hole in the wall, 500 square foot shop with maybe 300 customers. So fast forward, we bought the shop and I've owned it now 44 years. I'm still a florist. I call myself a floral artist. Taken every
And you're
course,
very well
gotten
known
every
in Miami, in the area with as a
yeah,
florist.
yeah. And I love what I do, and being in the hub of where all the flowers come from all over the world makes it a lot easier also.
Mhm.
And but I also love business, and I learned after a few years in business that if I wanted to get business, I had to learn how to market it because I didn't have the money at the time to market my business. So I started reading every book on marketing and taking every course, et cetera, et cetera. And I got pretty good at it. I started getting featured in newspapers, magazines. I learned how to send press releases and all of that. And you've probably had a similar experience. So I was on the board of the Florida State Florist Association, and they were asking for people to contribute articles for the magazine. Well, I said, I really am better at marketing than I am at designing. I said, so do you need any articles on marketing for Florida Sunlighting magazine? And Walter, the editor, said, oh, absolutely. Most of the people know about design, but know nothing about marketing. So I wrote, the first article was called Rose Marketing on a Daisy Budget. I ended up submitting 10 articles over the course of a year. And when I submitted my last article, Walter wrote me a beautiful email. So that was like 1997, I guess. And he said, he called me Maggie Mitchell of Miramar. He thought I was very prolific. And he said, I love your work. He said, have you ever thought about writing? No, he didn't say, have you ever thought? He said, you should write a book. That's what he said. You should write a book. And I said, okay. And I hung up and I'm thinking, what? I can't write a book. I don't know the first thing about writing a book. But you know, when you don't know what you don't know, you're willing to try anything. And so I said, you know what, let me do that. So I got this book called The Self-Publishing Manual by Dan Poynter, which had just come out. I started reading everything I could about book writing. And back then, there wasn't a whole lot of information on the internet because it was only a few years old. So I'd go to the library.
Amazon in print.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Like
Amazon wasn't a bookstore then. You know, they sold, you know, paper clips or something. And so I'd go to the resource library, and I'd sit there for hours and look through things and learn all I could. And finally, I actually wrote my book. The first book I wrote was called Rose Marketing on a Daisy Budget. And they didn't have Amazon bestsellers back then, but I sold it like door to door, speech to speech, and everybody I could think of. And I did end up selling about 5,000 copies, which is what I actually printed. You know, because back then if you we're a self-published author, you did your own books, etc. And
on demand.
Oh, and I'm a very impatient person, so I didn't want to go through the pain of getting an agent and finding a publisher and then waiting and learn. And I learned early on also that if you get a publisher, they're going to probably change the title of your book, and most of the book they're going to change the cover. And I was married to all of them. So that was what I did. And as I said, I've still had my florist. So I started speaking when I would design. I'd bring my book and I say, hey, if anybody's interested, I'm not a hard sale person. I tell them what's available if they want it. You know, if I see someone shows interest, I might talk to them and say, look, here's how I can help you. And that's pretty much how I've worked my entire life. And it's been a great joy. I work mostly with women. Now, I do have a couple of male clients in the healthcare mental health industry. Don't ask me why. They were referred and they've been great clients. So I'm enjoying working with them, but I really focus mostly on women's empowerment and leadership. And now I'm really talking more about writing books and how helping.
And you have different magazines on your own. You have the Woman in e-commerce, but you have other magazines online also.
Yep. I have We Magazine for Women, which was the first magazine I launched in 2006. And at that time, there were no digital magazines. Even Oprah magazine wasn't digital at the time. She came out with her digital, of course, 6 months later. But I was one of the first that I know of to have a digital magazine. And then I started another one called Women of Wisdom. Now I have Marketing Small Business. I have Inventing Women, and I have Flowers Galore magazine for the floral industry because I really love to write and I love to publish and produce, and I love to share other people's experiences because it's not all about me. It's really about, we all have so much to give. And like when you did your interview, I was reading and I'm thinking, gosh, this woman was so smart even back then, and look at how you've grown now. But you know, we forget sometimes where we came from and how much we had to offer back then. And that's what I try to do with people I work with. Don't discount the fact that you know what you know, because there are people who are willing to pay for what you know, regardless.
But what made you go from writing for flowers to do everything for women? Is there like a specific reason?
Well, I
happened like that.
Well, I found that my natural audience was women because I was involved in several women's groups. I started the Women's Chamber of Commerce of Broward County. I was in a couple of American Businesswomen's Association chapters, NAFI, and just a ton of others. And when I'd get invited to speak, it was almost always from women's groups, a couple of Rotaries and chambers, but mostly it was women's groups. And I noticed there was really a need. The women really, I think, more needed encouragement than knowledge, because most women have the knowledge, but not all women have the self-confidence. I didn't know what I didn't know or what I couldn't do. So that wasn't an issue for me. I just figured, let me try it. The worst that can happen is I won't write a book,
Yeah.
and I think that's what I try to share with other people is, and you've written books, so you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because I always say that the reason why in 2012 I switched my coaching to the French market is especially for women. It's because there's like a bridge between, not a bridge, there's like a gap, like the Grand Canyon between the mindset and the confidence of and the visibility of American women compared to the French. So I say I'm trying to bring them to the level of the American. And it's interesting because when I say that, everybody think that all the American women know what they're doing. They're very confident. But I always say there's still in the US a lot of women who don't want to be visible, but there's less than in France, but there's still. So you came up to help all those women with the visibility, with the confidence, writing books and everything, and public speaking, because I teach how to write a book. I teach public speaking, and you do a lot of public speakings too. So you empower them and you inspire them to go on stage also to show their knowledge.
Absolutely. I was terrified to speak in public. And when I found out I had to do that if I wanted to sell any books, I immediately joined Toastmasters because I knew I needed to work on my skills. Mm-hmm. And then I joined Florida Speakers Association because I knew I needed to learn how to speak in public and make sense, and also get people to pay attention. So both of them helped me in tremendous ways. And funny story, fast forward, I ended up becoming district governor for that Toastmasters group. I ended up becoming president of Florida Speakers Association 3 years after I joined. So, I don't just join things. I go all in everything. And I think that that's what a lot of women do, but then they don't know how to balance that going all in, and that's big. That was really a big issue for mine because when I first started, I had 3 small children. I was recently divorced. I had, I was involved in many groups and I didn't want to stop. Obviously something suffers, and my children suffered. They became very independent early on, but they didn't suffer in the way that we think. They just didn't have me as they should, but they're both, the 2 of my daughters that are surviving both have very successful businesses. They make a heck of a lot more money than me. So I figured I did my job because I don't ever have to take care of them now. Yeah. Yeah.
And I always said also that, in order to grow your business, you have to grow your visibility, and the 2 pillars to do that, one of the 2, but that's the one I did, is public speaking and writing a book. And writing a book, it's a great marketing tools. And then the book will also, for the woman who are not confident enough to speak about themselves or want to go on stage, when you go and speak about your book, it's become a little easier because you kind of hide behind the book. So would you agree with that, since you did both and numbers of funny?
Oh, absolutely. I needed to learn how to, if I was going to, continue writing, I needed to learn how to speak about it, and speaking about it in a way that's not selling it, but just giving people confidence that they could do the same thing. So really, when I started speaking about my book, it was more about how can you do this? Like, how I was really good at networking. Once I got over my shyness, I'm not really shy. I'm just an introvert. I prefer to be in a room by myself at a computer than a large group of people. But I do well in groups because I've done it for so many years. So that really helped me get confidence in front of a stage. The biggest stage I've ever been on was 750 people. And I was so terrified that after the speech, I hyperventilated and almost passed out, but I got through the speech. And thank goodness a friend of mine was with me and she helped me through that time. And so did other people, because they all saw that I was kind of scared at the end, but it was a good experience because it taught me my limitations. Sometimes we don't realize we have them. We just go out there and do it. Right. And
you didn't scare, but you did it anyway, so that way you were able to grow.
Right, exactly. And so writing a book wasn't really my message. It was really about visibility, as you said. It was really about marketing. I never thought I'd write a book about writing a book. My whole goal of writing the book was to teach people how to market their business. And most of my books I've written books on romance and having fun at work and marketing. So I've had a kind of a diverse background in writing. Never wrote a book on flowers yet, but I'm actually working on one now. Petals and Promises. So that'll be a book
after so many years, 40 something years.
Oh yeah, I've got hundreds of stories. So
Yeah.
I'm
So
just
it's
trying to
like a
figure out
twin.
which ones to tell, you know?
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you just launched a new book. It's called The Expectant Author.
Yes.
So
Expected author.
Expectant Author. And then I know I'm trying to see. I remember that the way you wrote the book, and I think it's very interesting. It's how writing a book in 9 months, and all the books is a comparison to being pregnant, being with a pregnancy. How did you come up with this idea of writing a book is like to be pregnant? Because it's interesting, because I have a lot of my clients, I never thought of this because I don't have kids, so I never thought of it. But I had the clients who, I think it was last year, she said, I started to work on a bootcamp with Biba that day, and 9 months later, I'm launching the book. It's like I having a baby once again. And I thought about her when you contacted me 2, 3 months ago.
Wow.
How did you come with this idea of like putting all together, and how to write a book like it's a pregnancy?
Well, there's a lot of books on writing a book quickly, but I can't tell you that I did that. I did a couple of little books quickly, but my actual first book, Rose Marketing on a Daisy Budget, took me 9 months. And when I was through, I was talking to my staff and we were laughing and joking. And I said, it's a good thing my husband didn't have to write this book, because I would think that men would rather write a book than give birth, because it's a lot less painful and a lot less expensive. So I kind of used that analogy, and I said, and that's how the name of the book came about. So in 2000 or 2001, that book title came about. And my first book, like I said, took exactly 9 months from start to finish to the day I got it in the mail, my printed copies. And so that's why I came up with that whole title, or it wasn't really a title at the time, but just the idea of it taking 9 months. And then I said, oh, I was the expectant author, thinking, just joking around. And
Yeah.
someone in the crowd, I don't remember which one of my staff, said, oh, what a great title. So I was at the time, GoDaddy was really big, and I went online and said, let me see if that domain is available. And at the time, I probably owned 20 domains. So I bought the expectant author, I bought expectant author. I started writing the book and putting notes together and of how I wrote my book, not thinking it would be a book about how to write a book. And then I put it in a binder and I put it aside. So I started this project probably 20 some years ago, never thinking I would ever write the book, because I said, who am I to write a book about writing a book? I've written one book, right? So I put it aside, never did anything. And I was in this group called a school group called Write Your Book. And the founder of the group is Sierra Melcher, and she's got a company called Red Thread Publishing, and she's in South America, an amazing woman. So she's very encouraging with all the people who join her group. And so we were talking about our next book, and I said, well, I have this idea for a book I actually started years ago, and the crowd just went crazy. Everybody thought, what a great title, you should write that book. So I dug through all my files, and it was a binder that was mostly in paper and my handwritten notes and a few things on my laptop. But I couldn't find the cover. That was the one thing I was trying to figure out, where the heck the cover, because someone actually designed a cover for me at the time. Anyway, long story short, I started writing the book, and in January, I started putting everything together. This is just this past January. So while the first book took me 9 months, this one took me 4 months from start to finish. So you can write a book in 4 months, but I had all the stuff before. So it probably would have taken me 9 months, because I have to analyze everything. I want to make sure everything's just the right story, just the right timing, everything. And some people, and I'm not a fiction writer. So I've known fiction writers to write a book in 3 weeks, because they can tell a story that quickly. It's all in their head. But this
I
was
remember
much
I
more
wrote my
technical.
first book in English in 2006, which was my very first book, in 3 months. And I thought it was already a long time. I remember I said, when I was finished, I said, it's finished. But then people don't really realize is that writing the book is the easiest part. Marketing
Yeah.
and selling the book, that's where the job starts.
Oh, absolutely. That's when you have to start. Like I'm in the throes of promoting. I just got my new trailer for the book, which I'm very excited to share, and I'll send you it so you can take a look, because I wanted it to look like a movie premiere. And I found this great guy who I was referred by somebody, and he actually helped me create the movie trailer. And so I'm very excited. That's my next step. So I always, in my mind, when I'm finished with one project, I always have something else going on. So I knew that the steps I need to take once the book is done, because I've done a few. And promoting is really the biggest part of writing any book. Yeah. You can write a book, you know, but it's getting it out there and getting people to actually buy the book. That's where the real work begins, you know.
Yeah. So what are the steps that you mentioned and you recommend in your book in order to write a book?
What are the steps?
Yeah.
Okay. So first of all, you have to have an idea and of what you want to write about, obviously. And then you have to make sure that there's a market for it, because there are a million books on the market that nobody's ever bought. Yeah. And a lot of it has to do with visibility and promotion, but some of it has to do with the fact that some people just don't want to read that book. You know, there may be 100 books on the same topic, so your book needs to be different. I mean, there are thousands of books on the topic of how to write a book. And so what makes my book different? Well, part of it is my stories. Part of it is the title. The fact that I created this trimester by trimester system to write and deliver your book makes it unique, because other people haven't done that. So I'm hoping that will resonate. And it has, because I've done really well so far on Amazon, and it's only been live for about 10 days now. And I haven't even done the launch yet. I've just done pre-sales so I want to get some reviews. Once the reviews are up there, now if you are, then I'll really do a big launch. And I've got a couple of those planned. So you have to know the timing. And I've made a lot of mistakes with this book, because I never, ever did a Kindle book before. I've done PDF books, and I've put my own books up that were printed and published by other people, but I had never done the whole Kindle KDP process. So that was a whole learning thing for me, having to, figure out. And I will tell you, my paperback book took forever, because I couldn't get, my editor, my graphic designer, we could not get the book cover right. It was always off by a smidge. And today I got the notice from them that the paperback is finally published. So the hardback was ready last week, but the paperback today. So I'm excited, because now I have the Kindle, the paperback, and the hardback. And you'll definitely get a copy. You'll just have to send me your address. So we'll talk offline. But I definitely was, learning the things that I had never done before. But I'm not afraid to learn. So that's the big deal. And I think that's another message in the book, is don't be afraid. You can do this. If I could do it, and I didn't know anything. I took English. That was my major in high school and college, but I didn't have any creative writing behind me, or, business. I don't have a degree in business. So I'm like, if I could do it, anybody could do it. Write what you know. That's what I've always heard. Dan Poynter used to say, if you write what you know, you'll be fine. It's when you start writing what other people know that you have no idea about, or maybe not even an interest, it will show in the words that you share. Yeah. So, and I kind of made this book more motivational than a how-to, but it comes with a workbook called the Expect an Author Workbook. And it's a 120-page step-by-step workbook process, so that you read the book, it gets you all fired up. You know the basic steps, but now the workbook walks you through each step individually. Mm-hmm. So that's my next thing. That's going up on Amazon. Hopefully today. The book cover is still the issue. And that'll be a regular book that they can print out, or they can buy it on Amazon. It's not necessarily suitable for Kindle, because it's an 8.5 by 11 book, but it's suitable for a lot of other things. So it'll be available on Amazon.
And that's what I like in your book, is because most people want to write a book, but they don't, because they think that's like it's an elephant. So where do I start with the elephant? So you speak a quarter by quarter on how to do the first quarter, and each time with the relationship with the pregnancy, you show every step. So it's easier for people to see, okay, how do I do? Because I do like a boot camp called My Book in 48 Hours. So I give a lot of information on what to do, what to prepare. But then, of course, after you have to finish the book. But that's interesting also, because there's so many books, as you said, on how to write a book. So a lot of people will write the book on how to write the book. They say, oh, now I know. But then they put the book somewhere, and then nothing happened. But with the workbook that you give them, not only you learn how to do it step by step, what to do every quarter, but now you can do it at the same time. And that's really how you get a book finished for most of the people. Because in my clients, I have people who tell me, oh, I started a book 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and it's still somewhere in my computer. But here you take people by the hand, what to do, how to do it, and now you're doing it on the workbook.
Exactly. You know, and you mentioned, you asked me about, so the beginning of the book is all about developing, is about getting the concept into some format that will make sense to you and to your reader. And then you have to identify who your readers are too. And then the next trimester is about developing the book, how to get it on paper, out of your head and on the paper, and the steps to do that. So as you said, you know, now with some books and most books are not linear. Like I probably wrote my book chapter 1 because it was the name of the book was Rose Marketing. So I wrote that chapter first, but then I started writing chapters all over the place. And then once I was through writing them, I put them into some order that I thought made sense, but I didn't write them in a linear order.
Yeah.
And a lot of business books are written that way because what comes to mind, you don't want to let go. You want to hone in on it while it's fresh in your mind. And then that often gives you the idea for the next part to write, whether it's chapter 2 or chapter 10. So I want people to understand that you don't have to write a book in order. I think even fiction writers don't write books in order. Sometimes they write the end and then they start the book. You know, they know what the end's going to be and then they start the book. And
Actually,
then
I have
obviously
one of my French clients who was writing a friend and a client who I helped do her book. And she said, I don't think that I can start a book from first to finish. So she took like little story, like everything is a little story. And then she put the little story together. And I like the concept because it's not everybody is doing that. So it will be a different book than anybody who speak like a biography, but the biography differently. And she says that's her son told her, I think it's Maupassant who used to write like that. And she said, Mommy, you speak about writing a book for years. Why don't you do like Maupassant? You do like a short story. And then suddenly she said, oh, yeah, that's what I'm going to do.
And you know, some of the most famous songwriters on the planet didn't start with the first verse. They started with maybe the melody or the stanza or whatever they started with, and then the song just kind of took on a life of its own. So yeah, what you said is so true. And writing a book, the biggest part is getting it ready. You know, the delivery, figuring out how you're going to do. Are you going to self-publish? Are you going to publish with a publisher? Are you going to do Amazon? Whatever you end up doing, you just need to figure that out when you don't have to do it at the beginning, because sometimes a book you think you're going to get a publisher. And I will tell you, I've never had experience with publishers, but I did have a couple of experiences with agents, and I got so disheartened because I didn't want to wait for 2 years. I'm also very impatient. And so knowing that it would take at least another 2 years to bring a book to market that I was ready to tell everybody about right now, I'm like, well, maybe I'm supposed to be more patient. I don't know. I had patience in business and with my family, but when it came to stuff like this, I wanted it now. And so that's why I went the self-publishing route. But if someone read the book and said, I really want to republish this and I want to publish it with Macmillan or whatever book company, Harper or whatever, I would not say no. Because really, that's every author's dream, is to become published by a major publishing house, I think. Absolutely. At some point, you know, and if they don't, I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
Pardon?
That's what I recommend also, because my first 3 books were in English, and then I started writing in French. But the first book I did in French was in 2016, because a publisher in France contacted me for more than a year and said, we want to take your book, the English one, we want to translate them. And from like the first 2, we do 1 book. And for 1 year, I said, no, I don't want, because I was self-published before. And I didn't like when you have a publisher, like they push you, and I do marketing books, or mindset books, so it's business. So they want to remove the business part of it. They don't want you to do that. As you say, they choose the cover, that the cover doesn't look like who I am at all. And I said, I don't like it. So they show me 2, and I say, I will take the less worth, but it's really not what I want. And after a couple of years, I had to take them to try.
Oh, wow.
Because they were not doing their work. And, they said, for 1 year, you push me. And then now you have the book and you don't do anything. And you told me that I will be in a library and in a bookstore, and I'm not in bookstore. So what was the purpose? And that's what I said to people. They say the same as you, especially if when you write the first one, do a self-publish, so you can do whatever you want with the book, with the cover and everything. And if the book works well, you can submit the book to a publisher. You have a stronger opportunity for them to say
Right.
yes, to republish this one or publish the second one.
Absolutely. Once they see your success, then they want to be all
Yeah,
over it. But if you're not proven, it makes it much harder to get a.
absolutely.
And you mentioned something that I think is so important about self-publishing. So um, when you go to self-publish a book, years ago it was considered like vanity publishing. It didn't have the respect that it has today.
Yeah.
If you weren't with a major publishing house, people didn't take you seriously. Now nobody even questions who your publisher is. They just want to know what the book's about. And so that's really where we've evolved, which is a wonderful position for people to be in, because it's opened up so many opportunities. Ingram Spark, Amazon, Kindle. You can publish a book in so many different ways, which is what my next book is going to be about, the published author. And I'm going to go through the different ways about, and let each person has a different personality and a different way of approaching things. So I'm not telling anybody to publish their book by themselves. That's a lot of work. What I'm suggesting is that that's one of possibility. But if you really want to hold out for that, big publisher, that's fine too. I mean, look at Chicken Soup for the Soul. It took them like 100 and some rejections before they got somebody to actually publish their book, and they never gave up. And look at that. It became international best-selling, millions and millions and millions of copies, translated into over 24 languages, and just so many different things. So it's nothing's impossible. It's just a matter of what works best
What
for
are
your
you ready to
personality.
put in? Do you
Yeah,
really want?
exactly.
Because I also see a lot of people who start to write a book, and I even have clients who take my 2-day boot camps, but I never see the book. And I say, what
No.
was the purpose to pay for it, for the to take your time for 2 days and to blog everything? And then you have all the substance to do it, because when they leave after 2 days, they pretty much have everything. They have to finalize it, of course, but I say you have most of the work is done. And then finally, you never publish it. So what was the purpose? So for
Right.
some people, it's complicated to go to the end of finishing the book.
Yeah, and maybe it's just that they're not ready. I don't really know, because I have friends. I have one of my best friends. She's a Mensa. She's one of the most brilliant women I know. She could write 10 books. She could be a lawyer without ever going to law school. She's just one of those brilliant minds. And we've talked about her writing a book. And I said, look, I'll help you. I'll spend a whole week with you and I'll help you get it ready. And then you just take it from there and I'll be your sounding board or whatever. And she's still not even written one word. She's got the idea in her head and everything. And I think some people never will write the book, even though they want to. And some people will take forever, like 10 years. And that's fine. You take whatever time you need to do it, because sometimes we're just not ready emotionally or physically or, mentally, spiritually, whatever that happens to be. And then when you're ready, because that's what happened to me with the expectant author. I put it aside for over 20 years. And all of a sudden it took me 4 months to write. And it would have taken me less time, but I also have 3 businesses. I write magazines. I have a lot of clients. So, I tried to write the book in between all the other stuff because it's not been a priority. Now I'm on, that mode of promoting. So I've said to my clients, would it be okay if we stop doing for like 2 weeks? I just want to get this book launched and off the ground, and then I'm all yours. And most of them have said, oh my gosh, Heidi, I want you to help me write my book next. So I have 2 clients who've written books and now want me to help them promote their book because they're seeing what I'm doing. And so I'm thinking, it just opened up a whole new opportunity for me. I had no idea that's what I wanted to do. I just I wanted to have 10 books. That was the bottom line. I wanted to say I wrote 10 books. Now I've got probably a dozen more, if I get them done, I do. But so that's what I think happens with a lot of people. They just and some people get discouraged. Some people really need handholding. So you could have a beautiful weekend retreat. And I know people who've taken those and they've gotten all the information, but then they have no one to, if they're not willing to pay someone to help them because it takes a lot of time to walk the person through writing a book. You know that. probably more than I do. I have not really helped. I've helped 2 people get their book off the ground, but I didn't help them write it. I just helped them promote them. And so I think that that's probably a big issue. And I'll soon find out, because I'm just going to start pestering my friend to write her book.
So what would you say to somebody who say they're really motivated and ready to write a book? They don't know where to start, but they're ready. How much, because I always say the book, it's an extraordinary marketing tools. How, for the people who are entrepreneur, how this will definitely help boost the business a lot when they have the book, and how they can use the book in order to find clients.
Well, I think a book is the most amazing positioning tool that there is, because if you're an expert in a specific topic, but there are so many other people in that topic that are experts, writing a book sets you apart from those other people. So now you can say, I'm an expert in engineering. I have a friend who's actually a publisher, a printer, and she's writing a book about how to start a printing business. And she's like, I'm scared to death, but I had her help me with formatting my book. And she goes, oh, you just inspired me. I'm going to get my book done. So we've been talking, and now I've got another new client who was unintentional, because I didn't know she was writing a book. And the point is that if you take the time to just figure out what you want to write about, that's the number one thing. And then figuring out who your audience is, so that those things really have to be done first. You don't want to be like the competition, but you want to know who the competition is. Who are the other people in that space that are doing it? And the influence comes automatically, because I've had people now say, I didn't know you wrote a book. And now you wrote a book on writing a book, because it's been 10 years since I wrote my last book. So I haven't really been promoting any of my books, because I've been too busy with other things. And so that's been kind of fun, because you and I got reconnected because I wrote this book. I've had so many people come out of everywhere, every social media, and say, wow, I didn't know you wrote a book. So it builds your credibility. It positions you as a thought leader. And if you're a leader in your business to begin with, or your company, having that added moniker of being a thought leader is huge. You can almost write your own ticket. People will start, if they haven't taken you seriously now, they will. But it has to be a good book. Don't just write any book. You got to write a good book. As I always say.
That's always said also. And then the woman that I train right now for the first book, Impacter Au Féminin, I always tell them, you have to be ready. And I tell them that during the 6 months that I coach them for the collaborative books. And I know that they understand what I said during those 6 months, the day because we do like a lunch in Paris, like in front of about 100 people.
I want to go.
And most of them, the first time that they write in a book, first time they have the opportunity to speak in front of 100 people. And I always say, or even the one that I helped you write their own book, I say, be ready, because as soon as overnight you become an author, people will look at you completely differently, and suddenly you have the credibility, even if you're the same person that you were before the book, but people look at you, and you have to be ready for that, because some people are not even ready. And I remember when I launched my first book I published the first one in 2006 in New York. I did the events also. I was doing networking at the time, so I did an event to launch the book, and people suddenly say, oh, you're an author. And I remember at the time I look at everybody say, no, I just wrote a book. And I didn't, no, I'm not an author. Those people, they're authors. I'm not. I just wrote a book. And it took me time to understand. And that's what I said to the clients now. You be prepared. And I have a client who published a book at the end of March. And and she did a big event also with about 80 people or something. And then she sent me a message. She said, now I know what you mean. They will look at you differently. I saw it during the events from people who know me for a very long time.
Oh, and your family too. The word author comes from the word authority. So if you think about it, you become when you're an author, you become an authority on whatever topic and I want to say this with even fiction books, because look at the most famous fiction writers in the world, J.K. Rowling, Dan Brown, Stephen King, they're authorities. People want to absorb what they know about writing. And even if it's fiction, nonfiction, doesn't matter. I can remember that first program I did, and everybody coming up to me and wanting my autograph. I'm like, oh my God, I didn't want my autograph. Maybe I better start practicing it. And then I got really bold. And after a while, I'd go to events with the said autograph copy and I'd sign my name, but they always wanted them more personalized. So I got like, well, I'm an author. All right, I'll have an autograph copy. But it does take a long time to own that moniker of being an author.
Yeah.
And there is a big difference. A lot of people are writers. I'm in groups where there's so many writers. They write prolifically, but writing a book just seems so much more. Think about the people on Medium. I know so many brilliant people who write for Medium and Brains Magazine and so many. They have so many great articles. If they wanted to just compile them into a book, it would make a great book. And that's what I tell. What have you already written that you could put together in a book and then expand on? So that's another thing that we look at when we're talking about writing a book.
Okay. So if you had a lot of things to say to people who want to write a book, but they need a little push, what would you tell them?
I would tell them to talk to Biba because she's the greatest motivator I know, and she'll help them. She'll give them a kick right where they need it and get them started. But you can attend all the seminars, you can read all the books you want to read, but until you're ready for it mentally, your family will look at you differently. I put the cover of my book up before the book was launched, and I just said, look at my cover. And my granddaughter-in-law didn't know I'd written any books because we haven't talked about it in years. And so I told her I've written 9 other books. She looks at me so differently now. And like now, when you get a certain age, they stop asking your advice because they ask their peers for advice. So the 20, 30 somethings don't ask my advice anymore. Well, now they're asking my advice. I'm like, okay, I've got some cred on this, some street cred now. So I think that, if you want to boost your authority and you want to be known in your community or in your industry, writing a book is probably one of the best positioning tools there is. So the only thing I can tell you is don't let what's in your mind stop what's in your heart. Get that book out if you can. When you're ready, and I don't know when you're going to be ready, but when you're ready, you will know.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much. So of course, I will put the link to you Amazon to buy your book now. We heard about it.
Thank you. Thank you.
And for people who want to, so people who speak in English, even in the French market, if they read English, and of course for my audience in America, you have, and I know a lot of people also in America who want to write a book, who say for years they want to write a book and they still didn't do it. So now you have the opportunity to read a book, to work with a workbook. So if you make up your mind, like I remember the first one I wrote it from October to December 2005 and published it in 2006. And I said for 3 months, I will work for 2 to 4 hours during the weekend. And every weekend I will work on it. So at the end of December 31st, it will be finished.